Okay, I'm going to go ahead and record this meeting. Hopefully it'll come out okay. So anyway, welcome everybody. This is called the Atlanta's Ring of Fire virtual tour. I've done the walking tour version, the in-person tour, twice in the last couple of months, and it's really, really interesting. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you'll enjoy this. I've tried to recreate as much as I can using Google Earth. It's actually pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you probably know, hopefully you read the article that I recommended. The Ring of Fire, the Atlanta Ring of Fire, is an area in downtown. It's really just south and just west of the downtown core. That is sometimes the center of the Ring of Fire is an area called the Gulch, and we'll be going down there in just a minute. That is what I call the Ring of Fire, and it refers to a kind of a ring. It's an odd shaped ring, and I'll show it to you in a minute, where there's just a tremendous amount of real estate development, mostly redevelopment, that's happening right now. So the Ring of Fire, I'm sure I would imagine most of you have heard of this. This is not an original idea or name. Johnny Cash made it famous in one of his songs, but the original, the OG Ring of Fire is this 25,000 mile zone, if you will, that basically is all around the Pacific Ocean. And it's a zone that is characterized by extremely active volcanoes and earthquakes. More than 450 of them, 75% of the Earth's seismic activity takes place in the Ring of Fire. And 90% of the earthquakes actually occur in this path. So this is what I would say, there's a lot of energy in this zone. So I use this as a metaphor for the development that's going on in this area we're going to be visiting in just a minute, because of the energy. And if you walk down there, I'm going to try to recreate it for you here with the Google Earth virtual tour. But when you walk down there, some of these projects are actually already under construction. Some of them, the ones that I've included, by the way, I've included 10 on my tour, 10 projects. Some of them are completed. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, State Farm Arena, the new Reverb Hotel, those are done. But others haven't even started. So there's all these sort of various stages of development. And when you walk down there, like we've done in the last couple of months, you can feel this energy. Truly, you can feel the energy. And I'll talk more about why I think this is significant, but let me take you to the OG Ring of Fire. This is one of the cool things you can do with Google Earth. So we're in the middle of Pacific Ocean here. Let me zoom in a little bit here. This Ring of Fire, see if I can spin the Earth a little bit, basically starts down here, well, all the way down here in the New Zealand area. This is Australia, and it runs basically all along the coastlines that face the Pacific Ocean, all the way down to the bottom of South America, 25,000 miles. So it's an incredible area. Like I said, a lot of energy. So, all right, so let's go back down to Atlanta here. The area that we're talking about here, as I mentioned earlier, is basically downtown Atlanta. This is south and west of the downtown core. I'm going to zoom down. See if I can get you a little more real estate here. Okay, I went to full screen here. All right, I'm looking straight down onto the area that I call Ring of Fire. So on the right side of the screen, you can see the I-85 connector. You see Mercedes-Benz Stadium here, just to the left of center, just to give you kind of some context here. And you see these blue names. These are the 10 projects that we're going to visit. So this area right here, all of this area, it's basically just west of the Capitol. There's the Capitol right there where the star is, and Mercedes-Benz. So you see Northside Drive that runs right next to Mercedes-Benz. This is sort of the left, the western border of the Ring of Fire, and it kind of narrows as you go up in here. And right over here at the top, you see North Avenue right here. That's kind of the upper end of it. There's Georgia Tech is right over in this area here. Just actually Georgia Tech is all right in here. There is there's a project that's going up here, the Tech Village, that's going to be huge. I don't have it included in the Ring of Fire, but that's kind of the northern extremity of it. The eastern extremity, when we get down into the street level, you'll see it more, but it's basically right over in here where Peachtree Street is, Central Avenue, if you know where that is. That's kind of the eastern boundary. And then the southern boundary is basically I-20, or this railroad line that comes all the way down here. The Ring of Fire comes to a point right here. Here's Northside Drive. I think you can see my mouse, hopefully. Right down in here in the southwest corner, that's kind of the point of the bottom of the Ring of Fire. Okay, so you kind of get a sense of, let me give you, there's another cool thing you can do here. Let me give you kind of a 3D sort of 360 of this area here. You can see downtown there. You can see now in the upper part of the screen, there's I-20. So we're now facing due south. And as it comes back around, you're going to see where the Ring of Fire is in relation to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and some other areas there. If you look to the left right now, you see the old Turner Field, the Georgia State Stadium right there on the left, just coming out of the screen. And right there in the top of the screen is Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And as it comes around, you're going to see all of these projects. You see the little cranes next to the names. Those are the projects that are under construction. And then, like I said, some of them are already ready to go. So that kind of gives you a context of, and here's the connector here, a great view of the connector coming right here at the bottom of your screen. So, all right, so why is this significant? If you read my article, I think there's 3 reasons that this area is significant. And the first is just the sheer size. We are talking about millions, tens of millions of square feet of office, residential, commercial, new space that's going to be coming online really over the next 10 to 20 years. These are some of these, especially Centennial Yards, is a multi-decade project. Some of them, like I said, are done, but we're talking about a couple of decades worth of development here. And the size of these projects is going to dwarf anything that's there already. So the economic impact of all these projects is formidable. And like I said, this is going to bring jobs. It's going to bring a tremendous amount of investment capital into the area, business, commerce, you name it. Residential. I think Sally was talking about how much of a transformation Midtown has had in the last 10 to 20 years. Well, I think, and that is true, probably Midtown has had the most profound transformation of any part of Atlanta. But I believe that the area we're going to be looking at for the next 45 minutes or so is sort of the next frontier, if you will, of massive development in Atlanta. Again, it's the sheer size. The transformational nature is the second reason I think these are significant. Most of this land, most of these sites that we're going to be looking at, before there was the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, was basically just abandoned industrial sites. I mean, you could argue that this is an industrial wasteland in the true sense of the word for the better part of 50, 60 years. A lot of this area has been abandoned for many, many decades. So the transformation that is coming, it's really hard to describe, and it's really hard to imagine. So I'm going to use some renderings, artist renderings of these projects to help you envision what that future is going to look like. And then a third thing, which I'm going to talk more about here in a minute, is the historical significance of this area. This is literally the womb of Atlanta. That's what I call it. It's where the city was born. And again, I'm going to show you some maps, and I'm going to show you some historical photos that'll really sort of bring that to light and make it alive for you here. But as you know, I'm sure you know, Atlanta, the motto of Atlanta is the Phoenix. And the Phoenix is the mythical creature that rises from the ashes. It has been said that Atlanta has risen from the ashes already on a couple of occasions, most notably after the Civil War, when it was literally burned to the ground. I think this is sort of the third rising, if you will, of the Phoenix. And this time it is big, bigger than anything the city's seen already. So, all right, so let's go down and take a look at the different projects. The first one is Underground Atlanta. All right, so if this works out pretty good, you've got the Google Earth on the left side of the screen, and I've got some images, some photos that I'm going to show you on the right to help you connect the dots, so to speak. When I started Atlanta Sherpa or ATLsherpa at the beginning of this year, I came up with a mission of what I try to do with my tours and with the work that I'm doing online here, and that is to help people connect with Atlanta's past, present, and future. Again, to connect people with Atlanta's past, present, and future. And that's really what we're doing here. And today on this tour in particular, you're going to get all three in a very significant way. And I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so if you look on the left in the Google Earth there are four blocks here. You see the little crane right there that I put? That's the center of Underground Atlanta. These four city blocks, there's a parking lot in the northeast quadrant. This is where the Peachtree Tower is, over here on the northwest quadrant. This is the entrance to the 5 Points MARTA station right here. And this is Alabama Street that runs right there where the crane is. Okay. Alabama Street runs right through the center of Underground Atlanta. For those of you that know Underground, you'll know there's an upper Alabama and a lower Alabama. The lower Alabama is where this gets its name of Underground Atlanta. So these four city blocks right here are Underground Atlanta. Now, this property was recently sold. A couple of months ago, it was sold in a sort of a surprise transaction to a group, an investment group out of Norcross. And I talk about it here. It's called the Billionaires Funding Group. A relatively young man sort of leads that. I've seen him interviewed. They haven't shared a lot of details, but they are planning to turn Underground Atlanta into again, and this has been tried before, but I kind of think these guys are going to do it because I think their timing is right. And I'm going to show you some. But before I get to the renderings and what I know about the project, let me tell you about the historical significance of this property in particular, because it is literally where the city started. Okay. I want you guys to look at this parking lot here. Let me zoom in a little bit more. See the parking lot in this one block? This is the northeast block of Underground Atlanta. Let me go to the 3D view there. There's the parking lot right there. You see Wall Street, Pryor Street? Okay. Hold that thought, because I'm going to show you a map from 1864, and I'm going to show you where on the map in 1864 that parking lot is, and I'm going to show you what was there in the 1860s, and it's going to blow your mind. All right, let me open this up a little bit here. All right, here's the map from 1864. Let me zoom in. Can you guys see Alabama Street right here in the center? That's Alabama Street. And this little, right here in the center of the screen, it says State Square. And there is a little rectangular building there. That is a train depot. That is where that parking lot was that I just showed you. That was literally ground zero, literally and figuratively, for the city of Atlanta. The 0 mile post, which you may have heard of, which is where the city was started. By the way, you see these railroad lines that are coming in here. This Macon and Western, it kind of curves around over here. The one that shoots off here and up to the off the top of the map there, that is the Western and Atlantic Railroad. And for those of you that know your Georgia history, that was the railroad that is the reason Atlanta exists. Okay, in the 1830s, the Georgia State Assembly commissioned a surveyor to come into the area and find the terminus, the ending point of a new railroad line that they wanted to build from somewhere in this area of Georgia up to Tennessee and into the Tennessee River Valley. And the purpose of that railroad was so that the port of Savannah could gain access to the Midwestern United States. And that surveyor, whose name was Stephen Long, came down in this area. He was from up north, by the way. He came down and he determined that right about where that State Square is, just a little bit to the left of that, he literally drove a stake into the ground and said, here's your terminus right here. This is where you should start the railroad. It was since moved about 1,000, 1,500 feet. And you see right here in the center of the screen, where these two railroad lines converge, that's where the 0 mile post is. That's where it's been. Like I said, he moved it a little bit after he found the original spot, but it's been in that area basically since 1850. And by the way, you see the triangle of the railroads over here in the center where these three railroad lines come in together. That's the Gulch. And I'm going to take you down there in a few minutes. And you see there's this big round building in the center of this map that says Western and Atlantic Railroad, W&A-R-R, Locomotive House. That was what's known or was known as a roundhouse, literally. And what they did in roundhouses was they pulled locomotives in like a pie. They'd pull them in from the different radiuses on that circle, and they'd work on the locomotives inside the roundhouse. Okay, I'm going to show you a photo of that roundhouse when it was there, and I'm going to take you down into the Gulch. That is what they call the Y Junction. That's W-Y-E. That is where the city of Atlanta started. Okay, now let me show you. Remember the parking lot? I said there was a train depot in that parking lot. There's your train depot. That's what was in that parking lot that I just showed you from underground Atlanta. That was the main train station of Atlanta. It was called Union Station. There is the second version of it. That version burned down. A lot of things burned down back then. That was the second, more spiffied up version of it. You can see the horse and carriages there. That's where the trains arrived. That was probably late 1800s. And there, my friends, this is my favorite photograph that I've been able to find of all of Atlanta. And the reason is, if you look very closely, see that train that's going across right there? That train is on the Western and Atlantic Railroad line. This is just a few feet from where that train depot was. And what I want to show you, I'm going to zoom in, and I want you guys to look right here in the center of the photo. There is looks like a barrel right there, like a metal barrel. And just to the left of the barrel, you see where my mouse is right there? Looks like a concrete piling right there. That, my friends, is the 0 mile post. That is the famous ZMP that was moved, and they put that is a granite post that's about a foot square. And they thought it was about 4 or 5 feet long all these years. By the way, that was put in place in 1850. And until about 2 years ago, it stood in that same place since 1850. Well, some of you know the history. The Atlanta History Center a couple of years ago, the state of Georgia owned it, by the way. In the middle of the night, like literally around midnight, they went down there. By the way, there's a parking deck above this now. This is you can't even, unless you knew where you were going, you'd never find this. In the middle of the night, they unearthed this 0 mile post, which had been there since 1850, put it on a flatbed truck, and took it to Buckhead. They took it to the Atlanta History Center, to be specific, and which is where it is right now. And that 4 to 5 foot granite post turned out to be 7 feet long. That much of it was underground all these years. So I'm getting goosebumps here, maybe because I've been down there, but I take people to the spot where this photo was taken today. And what you see, what you're looking into where that train is the bottom of the Central Avenue parking deck. The 0 mile post was removed. They put a replica in place there. So when I say this is a historically significant area, I'm not kidding, right? Here's a rendering from the underground Atlanta. Now, this is the previous owner. There was a group out of South Carolina that bought underground Atlanta, bought these 4 city blocks from the city several years ago. Their claim to fame was they were a Walmart shopping center developer, which it didn't go over that well with some of the locals, particularly the preservationists. And timing was bad. Timing was bad. And I think the pandemic was the nail in the coffin for them. And like I said, a couple of months ago, like out of the clear blue, it was announced that this group out of Norcross had purchased the property. Here's a rendering from the previous owner in the center, all those buildings right here in the center, those aren't there. That was a rendering of what they were proposing to eventually build on these 4 blocks. Remember what I talked about earlier, the scale of what's being built here is incredible. Okay, so keep an eye. We don't know too much about the new developer. They are putting together a new sort of master plan, if you will, which is one of Atlanta's favorite pastimes, is creating master plans. Everybody does it. And they are in the process of doing that right now. Okay, let me take you down in there a little bit more. See that parking deck right there? That's the parking deck I've been talking about this whole time. That's the parking deck where the depot was and the 0 mile post. See where my cursor is right there? Right about in there, between those car lanes right there. If you were to drill straight down through that deck, you'd be right on top of the 0 mile post. That's where it is. And here's the train tracks. The train tracks run right through here. So this, let me see if I can spin this around here. There's Alabama Street for you right there, going north and south right through the middle of the screen here. And then that is, see, you can actually see Lower Alabama Street right there. It's right there. All these storefronts right in through here, these are all open. See that purple awning right there? That's a brand new ice cream shop. So the previous developer was just getting a few shops opened, but they just, I think they just concluded that the lift was a little too heavy for them. There's the old Peach Drop post that I was telling you about right here. And like I said, very, very historic area. And then, okay. So, all right. So that's underground Atlanta. Huge, massive development, massive transformation for that area. And the significance there, of course, is that it's next to the 5 Points MARTA station, which gives it super access to the transit system. Okay, the second project is South Downtown. This dwarfs underground Atlanta. So you saw the size of that. Here we are talking about, well, let me zoom in. Let me show it to you on the map on the left. So there's the little crane. By the way, we're just a couple blocks south of where we just were. So underground Atlanta is right up here. If you come down 2 blocks to Mitchell and 1 block to the west, which is Peachtree, where I put the crane right there on the corner of Mitchell and Peachtree Street. Okay, let me take you on the 3. It's much easier to see on the 3D version of this. Okay, these are the buildings right here. That crane, again, this is Peachtree Street that runs up this way, and this is Mitchell Street that runs east and west. That is the kind of the epicenter of this project called South Downtown. That's what they're calling it. Okay, let me leave that and show you a couple renderings that I got from the developer. Okay, this is a developer out of Germany. It's called Newport, and Newport came into this area, I don't know exactly how many years ago, but many, 5 years ago plus, 5 to 10 years ago, and began to purchase buildings in this area it's roughly 6 square blocks, okay? And this is a rendering from one of their marketing decks. And you can see over here on the right, this yellow area, that's all of South Downtown. They don't have buildings in all of that because this goes all the way over to I-20, but right over here where it actually says South DWNTN, that's where their buildings are. They started buying buildings. Last count, they had purchased 48 buildings. 48 buildings in this 6 square blocks. Some people call it an assemblage. They're really just building a portfolio. Now, these are mostly 2 to 3 to 4 story buildings, and I'm going to tell you about the significance of this area. But this kind of gives you a sense of where it is. And this was a map that they created to show you where it was in relation to Georgia State, the downtown central business district, Centennial Yards, et cetera here. Okay. If you move back over here, here's a vertical view. I can show you some better ones of that. Let me show you what else. All right. So here you see this map. This is another map. I'm not sure it was from their marketing deck. This is this 6 to 8 block area that they've been purchasing buildings in, and I'll take you down to the level and show you some of those buildings in just a minute. Here's another rendering that they created to kind of show what's coming. They really a lot of the buildings that are down there are still structurally sound. So the developer's goal is to keep the buildings intact and refurbish them and bring in new retail, new commercial, some residential, and really sort of turn this into a thriving area that it was. One more slide from their deck, just to give you a sense of the amount of property they own. This was a map that shows all the buildings that they had acquired. They've got them numbered, and they've got them staged, if you will, sort of phase one, phase two. And there's descriptions of what they are, what's coming, retail and office space, and phase one, phase two, phase three. So you can kind of look at the map and see what's coming when. Now, this is a couple years old. I think the pandemic has set them back a ways, but they are going forward. And I'm going to show you in a minute the couple of the buildings that are sort of eminent, if you will, of what they're working on now. Here's some renderings from one of their marketing decks that kind of shows you the transformation of what this is what I mean about sort of looking into the future. These are renderings that show sort of what's coming. I believe this is Broad Street. You can just look at this rendering and kind of get a sense of what they want to create in South Downtown. This is going to be incredible. And the reason I'm excited about it is because this is an area, again, it's very, very historic. And I'm going to take you to a couple of the areas there, but it was once well, let's go to the next slide. Okay. There is a couple of actual historic districts that were designated as such that are on the National Register. And one of them is the Whitehall Historic District. Whitehall Street, for those of you that don't know, is now Peachtree Street in this area. Okay. You zoom in down there. Okay. This right here, let me see if I can get you. Okay. Right in there. I'm going to take you right down Peachtree Street. Okay. There, that used to be Whitehall Street. Okay. Where we were, there's the Peachtree Tower, the Peach Drop Tower. We're 2 blocks south of where we started. We're 2 blocks south, or actually 1 block south. That's Alabama Street right there. So we're 1 block south. That next block down south of Alabama, all the way down through here. See where this sort of reddish building is on the left and all these storefronts right through here? That is what's called the Whitehall Historic District. And if you look on the left, you can see what it looked like back in the 1800s. This was where people went to shop. This is where the hat store was, the shoe store, the dress store, the barber shop. This was the thriving retail. Before there were malls, people went to the retail area of the city to shop. By the grace of God, most of these buildings are still standing and structurally sound, and Newport bought most of them. And this is part of what they're going to recreate here. So this is very, very exciting here. This building on the right, right in the center, that huge reddish building there, that's the Kessler Lofts building. Those are actually lofts. People actually live in there. That was, believe it was retail. And here's a really good view. We're going to go down. That's Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard right there. That's basically the centerpiece let me show you. There's a couple other pictures I can show you from Whitehall Street. So that's from the 1800s. That's looking north on Whitehall Street. That building with the big antenna up there is about where underground Atlanta is today. You can see the streetcars and everything that were going up Whitehall. You can see the awnings of all the shopkeepers there. You just see, yep, there's one guy right there sweeping the front stoop of his of the thing. This is a little later. That's the building I just showed you. That's the Kessler building right there. This was back when there were a lot of streetcars running through Atlanta, electric streetcars. Here's an even more modern. That's that same view that I showed you in the very historical photo, looking straight up Peachtree Street, and you can see again what that looked like and why it was the. And by the way, it was suburban sprawl. It was the birth of the suburbs and the malls specifically, which started happening really mid-50s, all the way through till 10 years ago. Until COVID. Now the malls are dying a slow death of a million cuts, as they say. Okay, let me tell you, by the way, so that retail district is right in the center of Newport's, the German company's project, which we call Southtown. This one is as well. This is called the Historic Hotel Row District. This is one of my favorite parts of this story here, and you'll see why in a minute. Let me take you down there and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So we're now 1 block south of where we just were. This is Mitchell Street. I'm going to turn a little bit more here. I'm going to show you what it looks like right here. Let's go right on down there. You see these buildings where it says hotel. You see all these, the red brick building, this whole row of buildings right in here along Mitchell Street. That is the Historic Hotel Row District. And if you look on the right, you'll see a photo of what that looked like back probably around the turn of the century here. I'll show you, I'll enlarge those in a minute. But we're going to walk. This is actually, I'm taking you on the tour that I do. We are going to sort of walk down Mitchell Street in a minute, but there's the view. That's an old postcard. Those buildings on the right is what I just showed you in the Google Earth photo. There were more buildings on the left. Those buildings right in here are not there anymore. There's a huge building called the 222 Mitchell Street building. That's sort of the imminent project that Newport's working on right now. And that's looking due west, right straight down Mitchell Street. There's another view, same street, a little later. This was in the 20s probably. Kind of give you a sense of how historic this is. Again, this is a designated historic district, and Newport owns all of those buildings, and they are in the process right now of leasing them up. They've gone in and refurbished them, and again, thankfully they are sound, structurally sound. So that's this area right in here, this block. Here's a good view of that 222. Remember I said there was this massive building right there on the left? That's it. This yellowish building right there is called 222 Mitchell. And if you do a search for South Downtown and look for Newport's marketing materials, there's actually a beautiful website they've created. You will see that they're looking for tenants right now for these buildings, all of the old hotels and all of the 222 Mitchell. All right. While we're here, let me show you one other significant building. Zoom back out here a little bit. See this giant white building right here? Wonder if anybody knows what that is, or what was there before the white building was. You don't have to unmute yourself, but anyway, that is the Richard B. Russell Federal Building. See Mercedes-Benz Stadium on the other side of the Gulch there? That building right there, the Richard B. Russell Building, on that site right there was Atlanta's terminal station, which was the main passenger train station where people arrived when they arrived in Atlanta. So if you were a hotel developer back in the 1800s, where would you build your hotels? About 100 feet from the train station? And there you go. That's why they call this the Historic Hotel District. People, the front of the train station this is kind of a security entrance that takes people into the Richard B. Russell. That was the front of the train station. People literally walked out the train station, walked about 100 feet and checked into their hotel back in the day. All right. By the way, if you have any questions or you want to jump in, feel free. I'm going to go to the next project here, which is called the Freight House. I love this name. This is more commonly referred to as the Southern Railway Building. And let me, again, the 3D version is a little bit easier. Let me take you down to it. There's your Google Earth. This is a very interesting building. Look how long and skinny it is. And what's even more interesting is it's actually two buildings connected with kind of this multi-story breezeway or bridge, what they call gerbil tunnels now down in the Peachtree Center area. And if you look in the foreground, you'll see Nelson Street. Okay. Nelson Street, before those buildings were there, Nelson Street continued. There's a little view of the Gulch. Nelson Street continued all the way across these railroad tracks. And it actually did continue there until a couple months ago when they tore the Nelson Street Bridge down. When they built the buildings, they built them literally on both sides of Nelson Street. And then when the original buildings, I'll show you in a minute, were not that tall, they added stories to the building. and they built that bridge, that gerbil tunnel over Nelson Street, because Nelson Street continued through the buildings. They built it around there. So if you look right over here, see where all that concrete's been torn off? That's where they tore the bridge down. The bridge used to go right across the Gulch. This is the Gulch. You see all the railroad tracks. And I believe, I hope that they're going to rebuild it. I don't know what they're going to put there. Hopefully it's a pedestrian bridge. And by the way, on the other side of the Gulch over here on the left, where we're going to go next, that is Castleberry Hill. Scroll down a little bit so you can get a context here. So Richard B. Russell building to your right, there's the freight house. And I'll tell you more about the freight house in a minute. This is the bottom of the Gulch where all these railroad tracks are here. This is the Mitchell Street Viaduct that goes across, and you can see the stadium there for yourself. All right, if you would, indulge me here. Let me show you these images. Some of them are renderings. Okay, this is the rendering of the front of the building, if you will. I believe this used to be called Spring Street. I believe it's now Ted Turner Boulevard, if I'm not mistaken. And Mitchell Street is in the lower right-hand corner. This guy crossing the street right there, that's Mitchell Street. Okay, so that's the front of the building. Here's a rendering of the back of the building from Castleberry Hill side. And I'm going to show you some better photos of this in a minute. See the Capitol in the background. You see the Gulch there. You see that bridge that goes through there? That's a rendering of what I think they're envisioning for the future. They're envisioning a new Nelson Street bridge that's going to go across this sort of parking and green space area. And by the way, these buildings that are owned by the developer, this is actually part of what's called Centennial Yards. This is the first phase, the very first phase of Centennial Yards. It's a developer out of Los Angeles, very large developer. They bought basically the 40 plus acres that are what people call the Gulch. We're going there in a few minutes. That's the sort of the next phase of this. But this is phase one of their development, these two buildings. Here's an image from their marketing deck, which again is on their website. And you see the middle where it says Freight House. This was an image that they create. You know, when they're trying to lease these places out, they're doing the same thing I'm doing. They're trying to provide the prospective tenants context for what's around it, right? So this is what this image was all about, this graphic. There's the Freight House. Number 5 here is South Downtown, where we just were. That was the previous stop. And this over here is the Gulch. Number 3 is the Gulch. There's your Mercedes-Benz Stadium, basically trying to provide contact. Love these photos. This is from their marketing deck. And if you take a look, you'll notice the upper photo, it says 1912 concept, the original freight depot and office building. That's where they got the name. By the way, these are apartments. They decided to go with apartments. Initially, I believe they were going to go, one of the buildings was going to be apartments, the bigger one. The smaller building, I believe, was going to be a hotel, kind of a boutique hotel. The pandemic, I think, kind of changed things. The market shifted on them. And which is, I don't know the details, but something happened and they decided to go 100% apartment. So no hotel here. And the reason I'm a little surprised is because there's at least before the pandemic, there was a huge shortage of hotel rooms, believe it or not, in Atlanta, everywhere. So you can see what they did on the bottom. They added, they expanded, they went up a couple stories. They're both now 8 stories, and they built that connection between the two buildings right above Nelson Street. Here's something, again, this is, I love looking at these marketing decks because you can see the work these guys have done. They've hired historians to write up, you know, the historical significance of these properties is a huge marketing point, right? Because people today want to connect with the past. They want their place where they work and live to have meaning. And one of the ways these developers do that, one of the ways they create meaning, is they make these connections, these historical connections, very similar to what I'm doing now, just for the whole area. So this is a slide that talks about the viaducts, Atlanta's viaducts. This is a fascinating story, and it's a wonderful graphic because you can see exactly what happened here. This building, the first floor of this building, is now underground, just like Lower Alabama Street is underground. And the reason that these first levels of all these buildings are underground is because over the years, I'm talking about going back to the 1800s, they started building bridges across the railroad tracks. They'd elevate the streets, if you will, so that people could get across, the horses and the buggies and pedestrians could get across these railroad tracks safely. They ended up building so many bridges that they in effect created a second level of the city, which is the level that we operate on today. So the first level still down there, but there's bridges over it. And here's, if you look down, let me zoom in down here. There's a kind of a cross cut of the building right here. This is the front of the building I showed you earlier. On the left is that Ted Turner Boulevard. And then down below, this is Mitchell Street runs right through here, but Mitchell Street is also at the elevated level. So this whole first floor is, quote, underground, and they've given it the name the Canyon. And what's going to be in the Canyon is this. Again, this is what I mean about helping you connect with the future. These are the renderings from their marketing deck, but you kind of get a sense. And by the way, if you saw what it looked like a couple of years ago, you wouldn't, I mean, even rats probably wouldn't run around in this area. This was just abandoned concrete. This entire building was completely full of asbestos. It took them about 2 years just to clean the buildings to make it safe enough to even walk in. I mean, they had the hazmat suits and everything. They are now about ready to lease up these apartments, if you can imagine. After several years of major development, they literally ripped all the windows out. They gutted this entire building down to its concrete walls and had been cleaning it and scrubbing it for the last couple of years. They've now put all the windows back in, and those apartments, there's like, I forgot how many apartments, several hundred, are about ready to be leased up. This is a great photo. I love this photo, and I'm sorry it got kind of cut off. This is a view of the Gulch, and on the far right, on the other side of those boxcars, is the freight house. You can actually see this building we're talking about on the other side there. There's a modern day version of the photo I just showed you where the train was coming basically down these railroad tracks. The white building on the right here is the freight house. That's a photo of several years ago when it was still abandoned. You can see the Nelson Street Bridge was still there. That's the one they just tore down. That's where the rendering was that I showed you. And over here in the upper center is the Richard B. Russell building. That's where the train station used to be. All right, let me get out of here and take you to, well, we're still here. Let me zoom down there. That's what we were talking about here. The cutout of that building that showed the canyon was right here at the bottom of this corner of the building. That cutout was that side of the building. There's the Mitchell Street Bridge. And by the way, I mean, here's a great way to view. See how elevated that is right there? That's what I mean by a second level. And if you go downtown today, where we were a minute ago, almost all of the streets are on that second level. Okay, how are we doing for time? It's 10:52. We're good. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I do want to talk about this. Somebody told me that this property may be either under contract or maybe they found a buyer. This is called Artisan Yards, and let me zoom back out a second. We're talking about just a few blocks south of, see the freight house up here. There's my crane with the freight house. If you just zoop, go right down Ted Turner, and there's this property right down here. This is not even on the drawing board. This is a piece of property. This is a piece of real estate that is trying to be sold right now. And if you look on the right, there's these two buildings. There's a rendering here. I'll zoom in. That is what they're saying could be built. This is the marketing company, that the brokers that are trying to sell this piece of real estate. And again, I've heard somebody told me on my tour the other day, they thought that some tech village, some kind of a tech village was going to go in there. I'm not 100% about that, but I wouldn't be surprised. But let me just show you the bigger photo of the rendering. These two buildings, these two pretty high-rise buildings here, are the proposed buildings that they're saying could go on that site. There is a video. I'll send you the link here. See, some good aerials here. I don't know if you can hear the sound or not, but I just want you to.
Virtually all great cities feature a compelling central core that provides the foundation for their overall character and vitality. SSG Realty Partners is pleased to present Artisan Yards, a 9.86-acre high-density development site at the gateway to the city in South Downtown Atlanta. We believe Artisan Yards is destined to create a new center for Atlanta's creative community, appealing to tenants and residents engaged in advertising, marketing, design, media, technology, and entertainment. Located at Ted Turner Drive.
There's a Southern Railway building right there.
The majority of the Artisan Yards site offers the highest zoning density offered anywhere in the city of Atlanta, SPI 1 Sub-Area 1, offering the potential for well over 10 million square feet of commercial and residential development. As demonstrated in this conceptual site plan by Atlanta architects Nelson Wakefield Beasley, the Artisan Yards site can potentially accommodate development of multiple buildings more than 50 stories tall and all overlooking Interstate 20. Artisan Yards offers access to everywhere. Within walking distance of most of downtown's major attractions, the Marta Garnett Rapid Rail System is less than 200 yards from the site, and interstate access in every direction is within easy reach. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Internet.
Okay, you get the gist. That's a marketing video. That's on YouTube. That's a YouTube video. You can find it for yourself there. Just look up Artisan Yards. What I love about the video is they did some drone filming of this area that we're talking about. So they basically highlighted the Gulch and some of the views we've been looking at right here. So won't spend any more time on it, but you can see if they can put 10 million square feet of new space on just this 1 acre. This is 10 acres on this one property, rather. This is what I meant earlier when I said the scale of what we're talking about here. This is just one of 10. So we're talking about tens of millions of square feet. We're talking about tripling and quadrupling the amount of space that's down there right now. I mean, there's a couple of high-rise buildings, office buildings in Atlanta that have a lot of space, but we're talking about multiples of what's there now. Okay, Smith and Porter. This one's already done. This is an apartment complex. This is not a huge development. This is the smallest of all the developments here. But I want to show you something here. There is the Google Earth. That's the real-time thing. What I love about this is the location. This is directly on. Well, I'm sorry. This is in Castleberry Hill. It's just south. In the upper right corner of the Google Earth, there's our long Southern Railway building, the Freight House. So this is just right down the railroad tracks. They just opened these. They just started filling them up about a year ago. On the right there was the artist rendering of what it looks like from the front of the building. I believe this is Peter Street, and I'll show you a bigger version of that in a minute. But what I love about that, they had to have parking. So this could have been an incredible park with green space here overlooking the Gulch, but they needed parking for all these buildings. So that's parking right along in there. This white building's right in here, and this red building on the left, that is Smith and Porter. Here, let me show you a couple of. There's the rendering of the artist rendering right there of what it looks like from, and these are basically rented. I mean, these have been leased up now for a couple of years. What I think is significant about that is the fact that it's in Castleberry Hill, and it brings more residents into this area, because one of the things this area lacks is residential density. Okay, sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing, because if you're going to build stores and have restaurants and have office buildings, you need people, right? So you need people living down there for the area to be thriving, and for places like South Downtown to be thriving at night, especially with the restaurants, and have those outdoor cafes that we looked at them and go, you need people living down there. And so that's what all of this residential is going to bring. And that's why I'm so excited about the Southern Railway building. We're looking at, another couple hundred units there. I think it'll be very interesting to see how quickly they can lease up that Southern Railway building. That'll tell us a lot about the appetite for for living in this area. I think it's going to be big. I think that the appetite's going to be significant, but with the pandemic and all that, who knows? Okay, this is the next to the last stop. This is number 9. Love this new one. This is called the Reverb Hotel by Hard Rock. So Hard Rock, which is a huge entertainment and hotel company worldwide, has the Hard Rock hotels, Hard Rock cafes. They came up with a new concept. They decided to open a new version. This is a very boutique-y, Moxie-like, edgy, cool place concept. And this is the first one. This is the first Reverb in the world, and they couldn't have picked a more incredible location. You can see where it is. There is Mitchell Street that we were just on. This is directly across the street from the Freight House, and look where it is. It's literally in the shadow of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is there on the right. Okay. On my tours, these last couple of tours, I've been fortunate enough to go in, and one of the managers has given us a tour of the whole hotel. Here's a great vantage point right here. You see the Southern Railway building up on the left there. There's the Gulch. There, the front of the hotel is right here. Let me zoom down in there. They've got this, basically all of this area here is outdoor patio dining bar. This is the main entrance of the hotel. And you can see Magnum Street. They're still working on it here. So you can see the corner there, Mitchell Street. If you look on the left, you'll see the rendering. And let me show you a couple of images that'll blow your mind. There was the artist rendering, and it looks just like that. It came out just like that. Here's a photo I took from the rooftop bar on one of my tours there. You see it all right there. There's your Richard B. Russell building where the terminal station was. This is the, let's see, that is the Mitchell Street Viaduct. All of this area down in the center is our next stop. That is the Centennial Yards. And then here's the MLK. Here's another view. State Farm Arena on the left. This is, again, there's a rooftop bar that's at the top of the Reverb Hotel, and that's where I took those pictures from. So you want to get over there, and they open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, by the way. And I think they're open now 5 or 6 days a week. So, all right, Centennial Yards. This is the big one. Also hasn't started yet. So this is all we know about this are some artist renderings, and we know about the size of this. This is the Gulch, folks. This is called Centennial Yards. There is the aerial straight down on it. Take you to the 3D version here. Kind of spin it around a little bit here. As it goes around, you get a sense right there in the middle is the Gulch. So this is the developer out of Los Angeles. They purchased all this property. I think it's 40 plus acres there. It was a couple of pieces. Talk about an assemblage. And they have some big plans for this area. There it is right there. Okay. Let me show you on, actually, let me do something here. I'm going to show you something that this blew my mind, and I think it's going to blow your mind. Okay. Right there. All right. Look at the image on the left. That's Google Earth. So this is 6 months old, probably, where the satellite shots from Google. Now look on the right. I'll get back to that old photo in a minute. Can you see the photo on the right? That is a photo of basically that exact same, it's more of that angle right there. The building right there was not, or I don't think that building was there. I doubt it, in 1961. And I don't know what building they took the photo on the right. That's a 1961 photo by an Atlanta Journal and Constitution photographer. The reason this is significant, I'll blow it up in a minute, but I'm going to leave the vote on the left for just a second here. Look on the left on the Google Earth. You see MLK Junior Drive, that bridge that goes across there? In the 1961 photo, there's the bridge right there when it was under construction. More importantly, I want you to look at the railroad tracks, the number of railroad tracks that were right here where all these cars are today. The railroad tracks stretched from Terminal Station, by the way. Let me go ahead and blow that up for you. Okay, there's the MLK Bridge. Look at all these railroad tracks. You see this white building way over here on the left with the two spires? That is Terminal Station before they tore it down. That's where the Richard B. Russell building is today. That's where people arrived. And if you look out this way, this was all part of Terminal Station. If you've ever been to a big train station in the Northeast, you know they've got all these bays where you walk out and then you go down to your train tracks and that's where you get your train, right? Look at the number of tracks that used to be there. It was railroad tracks as far as the eye could see. There was probably 50 sets of railroad tracks from one end of the Gulch to the other. Okay. That's what it looks like today, that same area. This is the 40 acres that the Los Angeles company bought. That is a rendering of what they're proposing to build on the 40 acres. It's literally a city within a city. It is a small city. They're going to drop down in there. And when I say a couple of decades in the making, we're talking about 10 to 20 years. This is the granddaddy of them all. Okay, let me go back and show you. Do you remember the 1864 map? I'll go back to it in a minute. But in the 1864 map, there was this Y junction, the big triangle. And you remember I pointed out this thing called the roundhouse that was in the center of the Y junction? You are looking at a photo of the roundhouse, and you could see the fork in the railroad tracks. You could, to the very right of this photo, you can see the railroad tracks. That was that Macon, and I think it was the Macon and Atlantic that bared off and went to the right and went basically right into downtown where we started this tour. And these railroad tracks on the left in the foreground here fork off and go north and west and connect with the Western and Atlantic Railroad on the other side of the junction here. And in the center was the roundhouse. So, you know, it's hard to find a more historically significant place in all of Atlanta. Okay, I'm a little short of running out of time here. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I'll let you, this is done, obviously. There's a great video that I put on there. But let's do a kind of a flyover here of this building. Let me tell you why I think this is significant and why I put this on my list of the tour. It's done, okay, but it is in the ring of fire. It's on the ring of fire. And what I think is significant about what Arthur Blank built there, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, is that it gives all of these other developers that we're talking about a reason to move forward with their projects, an excuse to move forward, the comfort level that they need to go forward, because this is a world-class $1.5 billion facility that brought the Super Bowl to Atlanta. It literally brings people from all over the world here. It is now a multi-use stadium, as I'm sure you know. The Falcons play there. Atlanta United play soccer in there. This is a world-class facility, and it is on the ring of fire. So the developer from Los Angeles that bought those 40 acres, would they have purchased the Gulch if Mercedes-Benz Stadium? I don't know, but I doubt it. Would Newport have gone in and continued to buy buildings in South Downtown and moving forward with their project if the Mercedes-Benz Stadium? I don't know for sure, but I doubt it. So what Arthur Blank has done by building Mercedes-Benz Stadium is given cover, if you will, to all these other developers to move forward with these exciting projects. The same is kind of true of State Farm Arena. The big news here, this is the old Phillips Arena. Formerly, before that, it was where the Omni was, for those of you that have been in Atlanta a long time. The significance of this is that it just got a $200+ million renovation, and it literally overlooks the Gulch. And there's a great video that I included here on this map. I'll send you the link, by the way, to this Google Earth tour for those of you that want. And then last but not least, there's a place called Margaritaville, stop number 10. Now, this Google Earth, show you how fast things, the building wasn't even there. See that pile of dirt right there? That's why the people in the real estate business call it dirt, valuable dirt. That's literally what they buy. Look at the side. That is a tiny piece of dirt, so to speak. It's a tiny piece of property. And look where it is. There is the Ferris wheel on the left. That's Centennial Olympic Park Boulevard that runs through it. There's the Tabernacle. You guys know where that is. This is right there. And if you look on the right side of your screen there, you'll see a rendering. Whoops, that's the wrong one. That was, I'll show it to you in a minute here, of what's going in there. It is called Margaritaville. And for the sake of time here, let me stop that. That's the Reverb Hotel. I got the wrong image in there. These are renderings from the website. Okay, this is the Windham Hotel Group. And what Margaritaville is, it is, best I can tell, I think they're gonna operate it as a hotel. In other words, I think you can just check in and rent a room for a couple of days, but it's basically a vacation sharing property. It's kind of like a timeshare. I don't know exactly how it works, but if you go to Windham Club, and I'll send the website. These are the renderings from the website. I think you buy intervals there, ownership, interval ownership, kind of like a timeshare. And here are some of the interior shots of what they want to create there. This would be pretty exciting, kind of an outdoor pool deck. And this would all be overlooking Centennial Olympic Park, which is where it is. Let me see if I can scoot back around here. Yeah, there it is right there. There's a great view right there. So that building, which is almost completed. It's about I think about 12 to 16 stories high. And you can see it literally overlooks Centennial Olympic Park. Okay, one sort of summarize, pull all this together for you here. So again, we're talking about an area of town historically significant, very historically significant. We're talking about massive developments here that are going to transform Atlanta truly in a profound way over the next several decades. So anyway, let me stop sharing. You guys are still with me? I'm amazed. Once I got into it, I thought, let me just go forward here because I knew I was going to run out of time. But were you able to see everything? Did it all come through on the screen?
Yes.
Comments, questions?
Yes.
Good.
Great. It's great.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Incredible.
So much history.
There is a lot of history there. Yeah.
You showed us a view from the Reverb Hotel. Is that going to get blocked by some of these other developments?
I don't know. They're far enough away from, like, there's railroad tracks there in front of the Reverb. Those aren't going away. There are still trains. There's only one line left that scoots off to the right and goes into downtown. There's one line left, but they got to keep those. Those are the only way trains can get into downtown. They connect into what's now the Georgia Railroad. That is the old Western and Atlantic Railroad that goes down through Decatur and all the way out to Stone Mountain and eventually all the way to Augusta. They can't shut those off. That's the original railroad line that went into Atlanta. They're going to keep that. So those railroad tracks in front of the Reverb will be a buffer between that and whatever gets built. And if you look straight across from the Reverb, the old Southern Railway building, that 8-story, what they call the freight house that we talked about, is over there. And I don't think they're going to build anything tall in the middle there. It's a further north. It's over by State Farm Arena, I think, is where the high rises are going to go.
Okay.
So eventually they're going to be looking straight into the side of buildings.
Right. That's been a complaint in Midtown as people buy into some really great high rise. And then
I know. And they're paying dearly for some of those condos. Yeah.
But they were sold on the idea of a view that then disappears.
I know.
So that's just one consideration.
Hey, Melissa, I saw you for a minute there. Yeah. How's it going?
I mentioned concerns about historic preservation. The Margarita development really upset people because they destroyed a historic recording studio.
Yes, it did.
And I'm really pleased to see the South Downtown